police, jail, deportation fears. Those words did not come from a courtroom. They exploded inside a living room where a relationship already hanging by a thread suddenly felt one mistake away from collapsing completely. Jenny stood there frozen, thousands of miles away from home. Different laws, different culture, different rules. One moment, she believed she was defending a relationship. The next moment, she realized the situation might turn into something far more serious than family drama. Someone in the room raised their voice. Someone mentioned consequences. And suddenly, the conversation shifted from anger to fear. Because this was not about awkward introductions with parents anymore. This was about the possibility that the entire relationship had started under a lie big enough to cause legal trouble. And if that truth came out publicly, Jenny would not only face emotional fallout, she could face real consequences in a country where she barely understood the system. Pause for a second and think about that position. You travel across the world for love. You leave your daughters, your grandchildren, your familiar life behind. You believe you are building something permanent with a man who promised commitment. Then, one conversation flips everything upside down. Suddenly, people are talking about police. And suddenly, you realize the story you believed might not be the full story at all. But here is the question that makes this moment even heavier. If the foundation was already cracked, why did Jenny stay and keep building on top of it? Welcome back. I'm Sarah, and this is Sister Wives Daily. If you follow reality TV relationships long enough, one pattern shows up again and again. The most dramatic couples rarely fall apart because of one single moment. The real problem often starts years earlier with a small decision people try to ignore. Jenny and Sumit's story on 90 Day Fiancé did not begin with shouting parents or threats about the police. The real story started quietly. Online. Late-night conversations. A connection that felt emotional and personal. Except there was one detail Jenny did not know at the time. The man she thought she was talking to was not presenting himself honestly. The name was different. The photos were different. The identity itself was different. In other words, the relationship began with deception. Now here is where the story takes its first unexpected turn. Most people would walk away the moment they discovered something like that. Trust usually breaks instantly when the first meeting with someone turns out to be built on a fake identity. Jenny made a different decision. She stayed. And that single decision shaped everything that came after. Supporters say she believed in the emotional connection more than the mistake that introduced it. Critics say the warning signs were already flashing bright red from day one. Both views still exist today. Because when you look back at the timeline, something interesting appears. Every major crisis in their relationship seems connected to that original moment where honesty was already missing, which leads to another uncomfortable question. Was Jenny fighting for love? Or was she slowly trying to prove that the first risk she took had not been a mistake? That question stayed hidden for years. The couple pushed through criticism, family pressure, and public embarrassment while cameras captured every step. But recently, something changed. Fans started noticing hesitation in interviews, careful wording when the future came up, less certainty than before. Some viewers believe the relationship still survives because both of them already sacrificed too much to walk away. Others sense something different building under the surface. Fatigue. And if that feeling keeps growing, the next chapter of this story might not look anything like the last one. Because the real twist in Jenny and Sumit's relationship might not be the lie that started it. The real twist might be what happens when someone finally asks whether the sacrifice was worth it. Long before the cameras, before the family arguments, before the world started judging their relationship, the entire story began with a message on the internet. A simple connection. Friendly conversations. Long chats late at night when the rest of the world felt quiet. Jenny believed she had met a charming young man named Michael Jones. The profile looked convincing. The photos showed an attractive guy who seemed confident, friendly, and interested in her life. Their conversations grew deeper over time. Messages turned into daily routines. A bond slowly formed. For Jenny, the connection felt genuine. Someone across the world was paying attention to her thoughts, her experiences, her feelings. For many people, that kind of attention creates a strong emotional pull. Except there was one massive problem hidden behind that profile. Michael Jones did not exist. The person on the other side of those messages was Sumit, the man Jenny would later fall deeply in love with, the man who eventually became her husband. But during those early months, he was pretending to be someone else entirely. The photos were fake. The identity was fake. The introduction itself was built on a lie. And when that truth finally surfaced, most viewers watching their story on 90 Day Fiancé expected the relationship to end right there. Because normally, that is exactly what happens. When someone learns the person they trusted online never showed their real identity, the emotional damage is immediate. Trust collapses. The connection usually disappears overnight. Jenny made a choice that surprised almost everyone. She forgave him. That moment deserves more attention than people usually give it. Forgiveness sounds noble on the surface. People admire loyalty. They admire the idea of someone believing in love even after being hurt. But forgiveness early in a relationship can also shift the balance of power. When someone breaks trust in a major way and the relationship continues anyway, a silent message enters the dynamic. One person learns the other is willing to absorb serious emotional damage in order to keep the connection alive. And once that pattern begins, it tends to show up again later. But here is the part of this story most people overlook. If Jenny forgave the lie so quickly, did that decision quietly teach Sumit that the relationship could survive almost anything? Jenny's explanation for staying sounded simple. She believed the emotional connection between them was real. The identity may have been fake, but the feelings behind the messages felt sincere to her. In her mind, she was not falling for a profile picture. She was falling for the conversations, the attention, the bond that developed over time. That belief shaped every decision that followed. Supporters saw something romantic in that choice. They believed Jenny valued emotional truth more than the mistake that introduced the relationship. Critics saw a different pattern forming. They believed the relationship had already started with an imbalance that might create bigger problems later. Because once someone accepts a major deception in the beginning, the question never fully disappears. What else might still be hidden? And as their relationship moved beyond the online world, that question slowly started gaining weight. Eventually, the messages and video calls were not enough anymore. Jenny wanted to meet the man she had spent so much time talking to. The connection had grown too strong to remain a digital relationship. So, she made a decision that would change her life completely. She boarded a plane and traveled across the world to India. And the moment fantasy turned into reality, the next layer of truth began to surface. The moment Jenny stepped off the plane in India, the relationship stopped being an online romance and turned into real life. Real houses, real neighbors, real family members who suddenly had opinions. And the reality looked very different from the late-night messages that built their connection. The first thing everyone noticed was the age difference. Jenny was decades older than Sumit. In the United States, relationships with big age gaps already raise eyebrows. In many traditional Indian families, the reaction can be much stronger. This was not only about two people dating. For Sumit's family, marriage carries expectations. Cultural expectations. Family reputation. Social pressure from relatives and neighbors. All those forces showed up the moment Jenny entered his world. At first, Sumit seemed confident. He spoke about love with certainty. He reassured Jenny that their connection mattered more than criticism. He made promises about the future. But when pressure from his parents began rising, something subtle started happening. Decisions slowed down. Plans became vague. Instead of clear answers, Jenny often received patient speeches, requests to wait, requests to give the situation more time. This pattern showed up again and again on 90 Day Fiancé. When emotions ran high, Sumit would express loyalty to Jenny. When family pressure intensified, he would step back and try to calm both sides. The result created a strange emotional loop. Jenny expected bold action because she believed love required commitment. Sumit tried balancing two worlds at the same time, his partner and his parents, and balancing rarely satisfies anyone completely. But the deeper question quietly growing under all this drama was simple. Was Sumit trying to build a future with Jenny, or was he slowly buying time while avoiding a painful decision? Jenny felt the tension immediately. She had crossed continents for this relationship. Leaving her familiar life behind was not a casual choice. Every day she spent in India strengthened the feeling that the relationship needed to move forward. Waiting became harder. The longer decisions stayed unresolved, the more pressure built around them. And pressure changes how people behave. Some people respond by making firm commitments. Others respond by trying to delay conflict as long as possible. From the outside, viewers began noticing that Sumit often chose the second path. He spoke about love openly. He defended Jenny in certain moments, but when the moment came to fully challenge his family, hesitation appeared. That hesitation did not mean he lacked feelings for Jenny. Emotional attachment seemed genuine. But emotional attachment and decisive action are two different things, and the space between those two ideas kept growing. From a psychological point of view, this situation traps many couples. One partner pushes for clarity. The other partner tries keeping peace with multiple sides. Both people feel stressed. Both people feel misunderstood. And when that dynamic continues long enough, hidden problems begin rising to the surface. In Jenny and Sumit's case, the biggest hidden problem was not the age gap. It was not the cultural difference. It was not even the family rejection. The biggest problem had already existed before Jenny ever arrived in India. A truth Sumit had not fully revealed yet. Because while Jenny believed she was building a future with a man struggling against family expectations, there was another reality waiting in the background. One that would soon explode into the most shocking twist their relationship had ever faced. Sumit was already married. The moment that changed everything didn't arrive quietly. It came like a shockwave that tore through the fragile reality Jenny had built around her relationship with Sumit. For years, Jenny believed she knew the man she was sacrificing everything for. She had crossed continents, endured judgment from strangers, and faced the disapproval of Sumit's family. Every obstacle had been framed as proof that their love was strong enough to survive anything. But there was one obstacle she never saw coming. The truth. At the center of the storm was a revelation that instantly reframed the entire relationship. Sumit had been hiding something massive from Jenny the entire time. He was already married. Not separated. Not in the process of divorce. Married. The revelation hit like a betrayal that was impossible to soften. For Jenny, the emotional fallout wasn't just about deception. It was about humiliation on a global stage. Millions of viewers watched the story unfold as the truth came out, leaving Jenny not only heartbroken, but publicly exposed as someone who had unknowingly become the other woman. Trust, the foundation she believed their relationship was built on, suddenly looked like an illusion. Every promise Sumit had made now carried a new weight. Every delay, every excuse, every moment where he asked her to just wait a little longer began to look less like bad timing and more like calculated avoidance. The question hanging in the air wasn't just why Sumit lied, it was why Jenny stayed. From the outside, the answer seemed obvious. Most people would walk away immediately after discovering something this big. A secret marriage isn't a small mistake, it's a complete collapse of honesty. But relationships rarely follow clean, logical lines. Two powerful forces often keep people locked in, even when the truth hurts. The first is emotional attachment. Jenny hadn't just invested time into Sumit. She had invested hope, identity, and the idea of a future together. Letting go wouldn't just mean losing him. It would mean admitting that years of belief and sacrifice had been built on a lie. The second force is something psychologists call sunk cost thinking. When someone pours years of energy, emotion, and life decisions into a relationship, walking away can feel like throwing all of that effort into the void. The more someone invests, the harder it becomes to step back and start over. And Jenny had invested everything: her life in the United States, her stability, her comfort, even her reputation. Admitting the relationship was broken would mean accepting that the entire journey had led to a dead end. Viewers watching the situation unfold quickly split into two camps. One group felt furious on Jenny's behalf. To them, the betrayal was unforgivable. They believed she deserved better and should leave immediately. The other group saw something different. They believed that despite the deception, the emotional bond between Jenny and Sumit was real. In their eyes, the relationship was messy, complicated, and deeply flawed, but not entirely fake. Both sides had one thing in common: no one expected Jenny's decision. Because even after the secret marriage exploded into the open, even after the trust shattered and the embarrassment spread across television screens around the world, Jenny stayed. The battle between Jenny and Sumit's family wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was a long, exhausting war that stretched across years, and at the center of it stood one person trying, sometimes desperately, to balance two worlds that refused to accept each other. Sumit. From the very beginning, his parents represented the biggest obstacle to the relationship. Their rejection wasn't subtle or hidden behind polite disapproval. It was direct, emotional, and deeply rooted in cultural expectations. In many traditional Indian families, marriage is rarely just about two individuals. It's about families, social reputation, cultural continuity, and generational expectations. Parents often play a powerful role in choosing or approving a partner. Jenny challenged nearly every expectation Sumit's parents held. She was significantly older than him. She came from a different country. And perhaps most importantly, she represented a choice their son had made without their approval. For them, the relationship wasn't just surprising, it felt unacceptable. This created the longest-running tension in the entire story, Sumit caught between loyalty to his family and commitment to Jenny. But instead of making a clear choice, Sumit developed a pattern that viewers would come to recognize again and again. He tried to keep peace with both sides. When Jenny pushed for commitment, he reassured her that she was the one he loved. When his parents confronted him, he softened his stance and tried to calm their anger. On the surface, this approach might have looked like diplomacy. In reality, it often created even more frustration, because neither side ever felt fully chosen. For Jenny, the emotional toll slowly built over time. She had already endured the shock of Sumit's secret marriage. Now she was facing another kind of battle, one where she felt completely alone. Every confrontation with his parents reinforced the same painful message: she was not welcome. While Sumit stood between the two sides, Jenny often felt like she was the only one truly fighting for the relationship. That emotional isolation became one of the reasons viewers empathized so strongly with her. Audiences watching the story unfold could see the imbalance. Jenny had moved across the world and risked everything for the relationship. Meanwhile, Sumit seemed trapped in hesitation, constantly trying to avoid disappointing anyone. And in many ways, that hesitation became the defining pattern of his behavior. He loved Jenny, but he feared losing his family. Eventually, after years of conflict, arguments, and emotional pressure, something happened that few people expected. Sumit finally married her. For Jenny, the moment felt like the victory she had been fighting toward for so long. After endless obstacles, public humiliation, and family resistance, the relationship had finally reached the commitment she wanted from the beginning. The wedding looked like the ending to a long struggle, proof that love had won. But underneath that victory, many of the original tensions were still there, quiet, unresolved, and waiting. Because while marriage changed the label of their relationship, it didn't erase the problems that had been there all along. For years, the relationship between Jenny and Sumit felt like it existed inside constant chaos. Family confrontations, shocking revelations, and emotional ultimatums kept the story moving from one crisis to the next. But once the wedding finally happened, something changed. The external drama that had dominated their relationship began to quiet down. And when that noise faded, something else slowly became visible: the everyday reality of their life together. For the first time, the focus shifted away from big obstacles and toward the small patterns that define real relationships. Because when couples finally get what they've been fighting for, the question becomes very simple. What does life actually look like now? For Jenny, the answer involved enormous sacrifice. She didn't just move to another city or change apartments. She left an entire life behind in the United States. That meant distance from her daughters, distance from her grandchildren, and distance from the support system she had relied on for decades. Every birthday, every holiday, every family moment back home now happened an ocean away. And while technology can help people stay connected, it rarely replaces the feeling of being physically present in someone's life. Jenny had traded familiarity for love. Sumit, on the other hand, remained much closer to the world he had always known. His culture, his environment, and even his family were still part of his everyday reality. Despite the conflict that had existed before the wedding, his life still operated within the same social structure he had grown up in. This created a quiet imbalance that viewers slowly began to notice. Jenny's life had transformed completely. Sumit's life had changed, but not nearly to the same degree. And when one partner sacrifices more than the other, it often introduces a subtle tension that doesn't appear immediately. At first, love and excitement can cover the gap. But over time, people begin to reflect on what they gave up and what they gained in return. That question doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it appears in small moments of silence, moments where someone wonders whether the trade was worth it. This is where the story begins to shift from dramatic events into something more introspective. The chaos that once defined their relationship is gone, but the emotional math behind their decisions remains. Jenny built her new life entirely around this relationship. Sumit integrated the relationship into a life that was already established. Neither approach is automatically right or wrong, but the difference between them can slowly shape how two people experience the same marriage. Viewers who had followed their story from the beginning began noticing subtle changes in Jenny's energy. The excitement that once drove her determination started to mix with something quieter, a kind of emotional fatigue, not the explosive kind that leads to dramatic confrontations, but the slower kind that builds when someone carries the weight of a long journey. After years of fighting for the relationship, the battle was finally over. But a new question had quietly taken its place. What happens after the dream finally becomes reality? Lately, fans have been whispering, and it's easy to see why. Jenny's recent interviews, social media updates, and subtle changes in tone have sparked speculation that something major could be on the horizon. There's no official confirmation of a divorce, no legal filings, nothing that formally signals an ending. Yet, the small details have not gone unnoticed. Jenny's language has shifted. Where she once spoke about the future with certainty and boldness, now her words feel measured, cautious. Plans that used to sound definitive now include qualifiers like "we'll see" or "maybe." For fans who have followed her journey from the beginning, these are signals that something is weighing on her mind. It's easy to forget that long relationships often end quietly, not with explosive confrontations. Over time, the energy that once fueled a partnership can fade. Daily routines, sacrifices, and emotional fatigue start shaping decisions in ways that don't make headlines. Sometimes, the biggest turning points aren't dramatic arguments, they're small, deliberate choices that happen in silence. Jenny's life in India has always been defined by sacrifice. Leaving her home, her daughters, and her grandchildren wasn't a minor adjustment, it was a life-altering commitment. She gave up stability, familiarity, and comfort to invest fully in this relationship. And when someone invests that much, stepping back isn't easy. But neither is staying when doubts quietly creep in. Sumit's life, meanwhile, has remained largely anchored in the world he already knows. His family, culture, and community still form the foundation of his daily routine. That difference, Jenny's uprooted life versus Sumit's stable environment, has quietly shaped the marriage. It's not about blame. It's about the reality of how much each person is asking of the other and whether the emotional balance can be maintained over time. Now, there are three possible futures that fans speculate about. 1. Jenny decides to return to the U.S., reclaiming the life she left behind while forcing a re-evaluation of the marriage. 2. Sumit follows her, uprooting himself entirely to stay close, but doing so would demand major sacrifices of his own. And 3. They stay together, but the relationship evolves, shifting roles, routines, or expectations to make long-term coexistence sustainable. None of these possibilities are confirmed. What we do know is that the relationship is at a crossroads. The signals Jenny is giving, combined with the history of their story, suggest that big decisions could be on the horizon. Fans are left asking the same questions that have been haunting the relationship for years. Can love alone hold when the sacrifices aren't equal? Can a marriage survive quietly building tension beneath the surface? At this point, the story isn't over, but the next chapter promises to test everything Jenny and Sumit have endured. Every choice now carries weight. Every hesitation counts. And every subtle signal could be the first clue to what comes next in one of 90 Day Fiancé's most scrutinized marriages. The question now isn't whether the love was real, it's whether the love is enough. After years of drama, sacrifice, and public scrutiny, we have to pause and ask the bigger question. What is this story really about? Jenny crossed an ocean for love, leaving behind her daughters, her grandchildren, and the life she had built in the United States. Sumit navigated his own pressures, balancing the woman he loved with the family and cultural expectations that have shaped him his entire life. Every decision, every compromise, every tense conversation has added layers to a relationship that has been anything but simple. Sarah here from Sister Wives Daily. Welcome back. If you've been following this saga, you know it isn't just reality TV gossip. It's a story about human behavior, loyalty, and how far people go for love. Subscribe and hit the bell because we're diving into every moment that fans are still talking about. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Jenny's next move could change everything? Love has carried Jenny and Sumit through unbelievable obstacles. Public embarrassment, family rejection, and even the revelation of a secret marriage couldn't topple them. But here's the thing. Love alone doesn't automatically fix imbalance, exhaustion, or unmet expectations. Sometimes it survives, and sometimes it quietly shifts into something else. The couple's story shows both possibilities. They've endured together, yet the weight of sacrifice and isolation has started to leave subtle marks. Jenny's recent behavior, the careful language, the hesitation when talking about plans has fans questioning what comes next. Is she considering a return to the United States? Is this a pause, a moment of reflection, or a signal that her threshold has been reached? At the same time, Sumit faces his own dilemma: stay in the life he knows and risk losing his marriage, or uproot himself completely to follow Jenny and rebuild a life in a foreign environment. Every choice carries emotional and practical consequences, and neither option is easy. The bigger question this story leaves us with isn't just about a plane ticket or a legal filing. It's about how love and sacrifice interact. How much can one person give before the weight becomes too heavy? Can relationships survive when sacrifices aren't equal? And when love alone isn't enough, what fills the gap? These questions go beyond Jenny and Sumit. They resonate with anyone who has ever had to decide between staying, leaving, or redefining a connection that matters deeply. Right now, Jenny's future is unclear. No divorce papers, no official statements, just signals that something is shifting. And that uncertainty is what makes this moment so compelling. The next step could redefine not just their marriage, but the way fans remember their story in 90 Day Fiancé history. One thing is certain. Love brought them together. Sacrifice has kept them connected, but only time will reveal whether that connection can survive the next crossroads. And for our next video, we're turning the lens on another couple in the franchise who may be facing a breaking point that mirrors Jenny and Sumit's challenges. Could history repeat itself? Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this.